It came out of the blue and has caused major disruption for the NHS, which is continuing to deal with the fallout of Friday's cyber attack. 11 of Scotland's 14 health boards were affected, although some are hoping to be back to near normal working by tomorrow. Well, I'm joined now from Edinburgh by Professor Bill Buchanan, who leads the Cyber Academy at Edinburgh Napier University. First, Bill Buchanan, there are some reports, seemingly based on the chap who, by accident, stopped the spread of this, that it could all happen again tomorrow. Do you take that seriously?
Yes, it could happen tomorrow. I think we've been let off very lightly in this case. It could have been much more severe, and we could have had a large-scale outage of public sector systems in the UK. It's been well known that this vulnerability has been around for at least a month, and it was given, administrators were given time to be able to patch their systems, and it obviously hasn't happened. Along with this, we see that there are many Windows XP systems still inside the NHS, and as long as there's one of those computers in there, there is a way for malware to get in. Oh,
that's an interesting point. So if there was even, just to explain to people, XP is an old Windows operating system. It's several generations old. Are you suggesting that even if one XP system is in a hospital somewhere and is networked with other Windows systems, even if they be the latest, like Windows 10, that one computer, which is not updated by Microsoft, we should make that clear, is not updated, that could infect the whole lot?
Yeah, so the whole world knows that Microsoft will stop maintaining Windows XP and some of the older operating systems. So we've had a long time to be able to migrate away. And it's a difficult challenge within the NHS because you obviously have a disparate network which involves the connection into GP practices, which might not have the most up-to-date software.
Yeah, but just to be clear on the point I was making, are you saying that even one computer on an XP system, if it got affected by this, could infect an entire NHS system, even if the rest of the NHS was up to date?
Yeah, it really depends how they've segmented the network up, but this is a worm, and what a worm does is infect one computer inside the network and then actually spreads. So you only need one touch point into the whole network, and it could also be someone clicking on a link from email, dropping some malware onto the computer, or it could be a USB stick added into the network, which then infects the rest of the network. So once it's in, then it can propagate across the whole network.
Now, do you think the main problem is that, as you've mentioned, some of these systems are on the old XP operating system, or is the problem that most of them are on later versions of Windows and they for some reason have not updated with all the security patches that they should have updated with? As you said, Microsoft had put out a patch for this some time ago.
I think we need to go beyond the short-term fix of operating systems and computers. I think there needs to be a radical change of the whole infrastructure of healthcare and really move away from short-term fixes such as patches. The architecture that we have for healthcare really needs to move into the modern era of cloud-based systems, having integrated policy to be able to integrate things much more, and certainly to put the citizen at the core focus of healthcare systems.
All right, again, just to explain that, because a lot of people won't be terribly familiar with these cloud-based systems. This is where, for example, patient data, rather than being held on local servers, would be held effectively on the internet in the way that a lot of information is these days. And is that more secure?
No, it's not stored on the internet. It's stored within a private cloud. So that is inside the NHS infrastructure, or could be held locally within a data centre, within a practice, and so on. So that's where the confusion comes in. There is a public cloud, which is obviously addressable by anyone in the world, but there's also private clouds. Many organisations, such as in the finance industry, are now going towards private cloud infrastructures, where they centralise the security policy of the whole infrastructure into a centralised place, and then the data storage is also backed up locally and then in another remote location.
Now, they are hopeful, I think, of getting the systems that have been affected in the NHS in Scotland. We should make clear, it's not all over Scotland. The real problem seems to have been particularly in Lanarkshire. How do they do that? As I understand it, the only way you get rid of this is to effectively wipe the operating system on a computer and reinstall it.
Yeah, so increasingly computers don't store the information locally. I would expect that the NHS would be storing all the data on a centralised data infrastructure. So we typically just use the computer to be able to log in and get access to services, connect to the web and so on. So in most cases, what will happen is that it's just really a re-imaging of the computers, and they should get...
But are we sure that the computers which are storing the data, which the individual computers on the network access, that they themselves are not affected by this?
I don't think we can say that at all. That really depends on each of the individual practices, each of the individual local computers, and what's actually stored on these. Increasingly, we need to be storing in a centralised data infrastructure.
Just briefly, the other possibility, isn't it, is that out of perhaps sheer malice or frustration, whoever did this could trigger the deletion of encrypted information, of the information that's been encrypted. And if that information has been encrypted on backup computers as well, there could still be some sort of data loss on this, couldn't there?
It looks like this isn't the most sophisticated of malware, but not being able to get access to the encryption key is just the same as someone deleting the data. You cannot get the data back unless you have the unique encryption key that has encrypted the data. So although the files are still there, there is no way to access them unless you can actually find that encryption key. Some malware allows the files to be taken off the machine. It allows for remote access of the computer, such as to the camera, and to be able to take files off. In this case, it isn't a sophisticated piece of malware. What's more important is that the way that this spread was through a system called SMB that Microsoft announced over a month ago, and which should have been blocked by the main firewall of the NHS.
Look, we'll have to leave it there. Bill Buchanan, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the Scottish